such a lovely musical introduction.
It was tasty.
There you go. All right, welcome. This is the second of my programs. And this one, basically, we're discussing what I just have termed outer voices, just for a category. Last week we did inner voices and talked about the multiplicity of consciousness, which I believe extends to all people, not just clinically diagnosed people. This week we're going to be talking about voices and presences and experiences that come from without, that are not really part of us. This would be more like what Joan heard with her saints. And next week we talk about sacred voices, which are the hardest of all to talk about, as I usually say. So, let's go. Oh, this is just the same housekeeping slide I put up last week. We are recording this, and I am going to plan to leave time for discussion this week, which I did not get to last week. If you have something you'd like to say and you don't want to be recorded, just let me know and I won't bring the mic to you, and likely you won't get recorded. However, if you have a loud voice, I can't promise that. So just be aware and choose accordingly with your own comfort level. Okay, I put this up just because I made it for last week and I liked it so much I wanted to use it again, and it still applies, so we'll still talk about it. I am very much, somehow or other ended up feeling very drawn to study consciousness. And I've been on this journey, I don't know, in some ways maybe my whole life, but, and as such, it's important to me, I want to learn. I'm not about just sharing fun stories. I want to try to do my part to help learn about consciousness, because I'm not alone. There are a lot of people who are studying consciousness. So what I've learned is that there are two ways, thinking scientifically, that you can deviate, since this is all self-report. Okay, that's all we got to go on here. Well, that's not true, but that's what I'm focusing on. What I have done for years is refuse to fill my shoes, because I have had a lot of these kind of experiences. Mostly I don't talk about them. Occasionally with a close friend, I've shared some with Kay and a few other people, but mostly I don't talk about them. I don't think that advances the study of consciousness for those of us that do have these experiences, to stay quiet. So with the prompting of the play and having that as a, sort of an entree, I decided to do that. Now, on the other hand, are people who, and it's very easy, I understand why they do this, but people who want to elaborate on their stories. Like the example I gave last week was, I have had two near-death experiences. Mine were not flashy. They were, I didn't see a light. There was no family. I had a tunnel. I had the noise. I had a sense of it. That's about all. But I can say more about it later. But anyway, it would be very much more fun to tell you, oh, this happened and that happened and, whatever. But again, that's not going to advance the study of consciousness either. So I made up this little ditty, which I was very proud of myself for. Your shoes. Fill them, but don't frill them. Okay, what do we call these kinds of experiences? Some people call them paranormal experiences or anomalous experiences. There's a newer term called transpersonal experiences that adds the dimension that I am interested in, which is growing from these experiences, using them to expand consciousness, using them to connect with others, because when your consciousness is expanded, you can connect with other consciousnesses and know that you're connecting with other consciousnesses at times. And so I love the term transpersonal experiences, so that's what I'm going to use today. Okay, I used my friend ChatGPT and asked it to give me a list of these kinds of experiences, and I picked out some that I had had some personal experience with, because I do think it's important to share stories, and I'm hoping I can encourage you to share your stories. And so, what did I put here? Lucid dreaming. We talked a little bit about lucid dreaming last week. Lucid dreaming is that state that's right between when you fall asleep, called hypnopompic imagery, or this hypnopompic state. No, hypnagogic. Or when you're first waking up, which is the hypnopompic state, or hypnopompic images. Now, when I first read about this, I wasn't even really aware of it. I didn't know anything about it, but I thought, well, let me see if I can pay attention. And by golly, I did. And at first, all I was seeing were colors, like a swirl of colors, not too dissimilar from the Northern Lights, you know, and it would only last like that long and it would be gone, you know. But still, it was something. And this was many years ago, in my 20s, I think, and it was something. And so I decided to just practice lying there real still and see if I could learn to elongate those times. And it's been phenomenal over the years, because now I'm more likely to get things that are like lucid dreaming, which is like I will have, yeah, it's very cool, yeah, I will have an entire dream unfold in front of me. And the advantage of being conscious is that sometimes you can alter things. Like if you see, if it's you, dreams are always symbolic. So the thing, if you're dreaming about a bear, if it feels like it's you, it's you. You know, don't worry about the fact that it's a bear. And you know, if you see the bear about to do something foolish, if you're lucid and if you've practiced, if you're careful, you can find ways to gently encourage the bear to make a different choice that would have a little better outcome for him. You have to be careful, because this whole type of experience is very sensitive to your conscious intervention. It's like if these experiences, I don't know where they come from, I don't know what to call them, but if they become aware that you are observing them, they're out of there. It totally stops the experience. So, but you can learn to play with them, and for a while, because they always say that when you're in this state, your body is paralyzed, you can't move. And so for a while, I was experimenting with, let me see if I can push that limit a little bit. Let me see if I can get a finger to move or something. And I don't. There was one time I thought maybe I did, but that's nothing to write home about. So, all right, telepathy. The only reason I put this up here is because the concept has played a very important part in my experiences, in that I believe, and this is a me belief, I don't know this for sure, but I believe that this is the general way that spirits and people in heaven and whomever you want to talk about communicate. I don't think they use words. I don't think they, do any of this. They just know, what the other was thinking, what the other one is feeling, what the other one is sensing. You just know it. And so many of my experiences have been like that. Last week when I was talking about my own inner parts, for the most part, I didn't know they were there. I'm not aware of them. Right now, standing with you, I'm not aware of any of them. But if one of them locks in place in my consciousness, whether or not I tell you about it, I feel them. I see them, I know what they look like, I feel who they are and what they're about, I feel what they're feeling, which is very helpful. We'll get to that toward the end. And so I just put that in here as telepathy. I have not personally experienced the, projecting thoughts across the waves, so to speak. However, I have had experiences like this, and at times I have more of these than others. Where I remember one time the old office that I used to have was an upstairs office, and the waiting room was downstairs, so anytime I went to get a client, I had to go downstairs to get the client. So I remember this one time, and as I was going down the stairs, I thought, wonder if so-and-so broke their leg. Well, they had. I got down to the waiting room, and here's this person in the cast, and I don't know where that came from. I thought it was just a wonder if, but, so anyway, there's that. Okay, let's move on. Because I don't want to get stuck in place. Okay, near-death experiences. These can be astounding, and there are still some pure scientist types who try to say, oh no, it's just, like in your play, it's just a temporal lobe seizure, or it's just a this or that. But honestly, because of my 2 near-death studies, non-remarkable that they were, I became part of a 20 or so year study of a researcher in University of Virginia who was doing research on near-death studies. And he recently has written a book, because all of his work was scientific, published journals and that kind of thing. But he recently published a book for the lay public, which was nice because those of us that were participants, we never got to hear any of the other participants' stories. And so he had gotten all of our permission to share our stories, and then he compiled this book. The very first one, and I'm sure I'm not telling it correctly, but I have the general idea, was when he was, I think, still a resident or something, and still trying to decide what he wanted to do and had no research focus, or I don't think he even knew what field of medicine he wanted to go into. But he was assisting I guess he was doing a surgical rotation, and he was assisting at a surgery. And so he went and ate before he went into the surgery, and he got some spaghetti sauce on his tie or his whatever, and he didn't have time to do anything with it, and so he just went ahead and scrubbed in and went into the surgery. And sure enough, the persons they were working on did die on the table. They, flatlined. They resuscitated her. It was her, I think, brought her back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't think anything about it. He just thought that, this is a not uncommon experience. Later, I guess he came back in the next day to do rounds or something like that. And she said, oh, I remember you. And he said, we never met. And she said, oh, I know. But she said, when I was out of my body, I floated over to the next room and you were standing in there. You were the one with spaghetti sauce on your tie. And I was like, whoa, that is a cool experience. That is a very cool experience. And of course, after that, he was a believer and was setting out to, do what he could to study this field. And so it was very cool. Mine, incidentally, they occurred during my sleep. I seriously doubt that my heart actually stopped. I don't really think I was near death. In retrospect, looking back over my entire life of these kinds of experiences, I think I'm supposed to learn, and I think I've been shown some of these things so that I can learn from them. So I think it's almost like God or whomever said, here, this is what death is like. And I'm like, okay. But I don't think I really died. So that's why I didn't even put that in there, but I think that can occur at other times too for other reasons. Out-of-body experiences. I don't have these often, but my most astonishing one and fun to tell was One time I was in Southern California at a place called Esalen Institute, which is right on the coast, and I was lying on my back and looking up at this giant redwood tree, and all of a sudden I was the tree. It's not like I floated up into the branches. I was that tree. I don't know how else to describe it to you. That was my experience. Did I feel like I had bark? And no, it was just a subjective experience of being the tree, and it was so cool, so cool. I don't have that often, but some people do. The woman that saw the spaghetti sauce, that was certainly an out-of-body experience that she had. Okay, what do we got here? Communication from the dead and past life experiences. These two are probably the ones I have had the most of, and they're almost, communications with the dead are, I wouldn't say daily, but almost a daily occurrence for me. It's very common. What did I write about it? They can occur spontaneously or in some cases be summoned. I rarely try to summon anybody, but I do interact with them when I am aware of them, and they interact with me. And one of my favorite of all the stories, we'll share that. Okay, I'm going to talk about my mom. Toward the end of her life, she got dementia, and I had her at Fountain View here in town. She lived in Oklahoma, but I brought her here to take care of her for the last 3 years of her life. And I went to see her daily. I was very, very close with my mom, still am, love her dearly. And so I went almost daily to see her. I couldn't stay long, it hurt my heart too much, but I would go and, be with her, and she always knew me. I was very grateful. She never forgot who I was and never forgot our stories and memories and all that. So there was one Sunday that I was just wiped out, absolutely wiped out. Oh, I should say that I had been aware for a long time that various of her brothers and sisters and parents who had died, not her father, but others that had died, they would be chattering about her a lot. And I was tuning in on it some. I couldn't always hear exactly what they said, but I sensed the chatter and I sensed their presence. So there was this one Sunday that I was just worn out. I did not want to go over there. I just did not want to go, and so I had convinced myself to set my guilt aside, and I'm just going to take a day off. I did all the, it's okay, all this kind of stuff. And then I started feeling like that I really needed to go. And the voices, whatever this was I was picking up from inside, they were getting more agitated. And finally, I just said, look, if you all want me to go, you're going to have to give me a better sign than this, because I don't want to, but I will if I need to. And I honestly don't remember what happened at that point. It wasn't anything special, except that I did finally decide, I think I need to go. So I went over there. When I walked in, the first person I saw said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. We were just getting ready to call you. Your mother is so upset today, and we thought that maybe you can calm her down. None of us have been able to." So I thought, okay, I did need to be here today. And I went in and got her calmed down very quickly, and we had a nice visit, and I left. Now, I tend to talk to myself a lot. It's one of the problems with living alone, I guess. But when there are voices, when there are others, I'll talk to them too. I'm non-discriminatory. And so when I was leaving the hospital that day, the voice that I always heard the most, and I'll tell a story about her too, was my Aunt Lucille. My whole family, various ones of us, were considered witchy. That's what it was called, because we didn't have words like transpersonal or whatever. But a lot of people in our family have this. There must be a genetic component to this, whatever it is. But Lucille was always the strongest. And so she was sort of my person that I would go to that I might be able to actually connect with. So as I was walking out to my car, I just directly talked to her. Instead of, like earlier, I had just said, look, if you all want me to go, and it was just, and this time I just said, Lucille, I'm glad you told me to come, but next time I wish you'd be a little more obvious about it. Well, what happened was I saw this huge, just face of Lucille appeared right in front of me going, because she had no idea that I knew that she was there. She had no idea that I knew that she was there. And so I just started laughing and I said, yes, I know you're here. Yes, I can see you and all of that and whatever. And she was just mortified because that was Lucille's personality anyway, to be mortified easily. So, but there was that, but that was just sort of a funny thing. Now, back to Lucille because, I need to, my stories will flow better if they're in a certain order. Lucille, as the witchiest one, well, besides my grandmother, Lucille was the one that was with my grandmother when she passed. And what Lucille has always told, and again, Lucille didn't share her experiences with a lot either, but she did share with me because she knew that I took her seriously and loved hearing the stories. And so she told me that she said, at the moment Grandma died, she heard my grandma laugh and say, oh, Lucille, I didn't know it would be so beautiful. And I thought, oh, what a wonderful gift and whatever. So I had that. So then fast forward to when my mother died, and I was with her also, and knowing Lucille's story and knowing that I seem to have that gene or whatever it is that allows me to do this, I was expecting some kind of communication from my mom. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was as if she just wasn't there. And I was disappointed, but what can you do? So I went through the motions of going home and making all the arrangements and, had to transport her body back to Oklahoma and getting, just a lot of stuff we had to do. And then had to buy plane tickets to Oklahoma and flew out and was planning the funeral and still disappointed that I wasn't able to communicate with her at all. And then I forget exactly when it was, but I think at one point I was looking at a picture of what she always called the old cottonwood tree, because it was a tree that she had played on as a kid and loved as a kid and all that. And when I looked at that picture, I got a faint sense of her presence. And so I could feel her. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't, but it was, for me, it was reassuring. It was like, oh, thank goodness. So we went on, we did the service, we did everything was fine. Came back home, and I don't remember if this experience I'm going to tell you is the very next one or not. It seems like there was some other, just sensing her presence in a minimal kind of way. Until one day, I went down, I have learned that if you want to communicate with the dead, get in places near water. At least this is what helps for me. Sometimes they will come to me in the shower, when, or whatever. This time I went down to the laundry in my basement. And pipes, all the pipes and things overhead. I opened the door, I don't know if that part matters. I opened the door to the basement. As I opened the door, my mother jumped out at me and said, "Boo!" And of course I died laughing, and I don't remember if she laughed. I don't remember what happened, but that was just the most wonderful gift. And after that, what I was told by I used to see this woman who also knew about this kind of thing and could interpret it sometimes, and she said She said that she thought that my mother had had to store up a tremendous amount of energy to pull that off, that it wasn't easy to do that kind of thing, but that she wanted to make sure I knew that she was okay. And that's why she did this. So I was eternally grateful. And since then, I can sense her presence most anytime I want to, not always. But there were some, when you're trying to research something and it's a subjective thing like this, you look for ways to validate it or replicate it or whatever. And there were some. My mother, who was always witchy when she was still alive, in her nursing home, I would walk in and there was a bench to sit alongside the hall right here, and then my mother's room was right over there. And often, not always, but as I would walk in, I would sense my grandmother sitting there on that bench. And so I would go on in to see my mother, and I never mentioned it to her, and whatever. One day when I was in visiting my mother, she said, my mama often sits right out there on that little bench outside in the hall. And I was like, yeah, I know. I know. So there was that. And the other thing was, my mother's oldest sister, named Lillian, when I was sensing her other siblings who had passed, I never could sense Lillian. And Lillian was always the one, I think she's listening now because I'm about to talk about her and she's laughing. She was the one with the biggest mouth who would talk the most and be the most out there and the most extroverted and the most everything. And so I was surprised that Lillian wasn't there during the time when my mom was dying. Now, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know anything about it. I thought, well, maybe she just doesn't, I don't know. But anyway, I would go in and visit my mom. And she would say, of course, this was with her dementia. She said, when is Lillian going to get back from her trip? And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, I just haven't seen her in a long time. She said, I see the others, but I just haven't seen her in a long time. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I don't know when she's going to get back. So those two stories were very important to me, I thought. Okay, so let's see what comes next.
Susan, can I interject something?
Please do. You want? Oh, here. I'm not even using this. Well, okay.
For those of you that want to do some more reading on this, there's a psychologist, Gary Schwartz, who has done some wonderful experiments with this issue of getting information from people who have passed on. I think one of the book titles is The Afterlife Experiments, where he goes through a series of tightening the criteria of the experiment using psychics who reportedly had the ability to communicate with those who had passed on. And he would have someone who knew that person, a daughter, a good friend, whatever, sit on the other side of the panel so that the psychic couldn't see who was sitting there. And the psychic had 10 minutes to pull up whatever information he could about somebody who had passed on. And some of the stories that you'll read in that are pretty interesting in terms of, that would be awfully hard to pull up just out of random things.
Yeah.
So it's a vehicle for providing a basis, a confirmation that, okay, this sometimes happens. I'm not crazy if I entertain that idea.
Yeah.
Gary Schwartz and the Afterlife Experiments is a good place to nurture that curiosity.
Thank you, Paul.
Tell me the name of the book, please.
Gary Schwartz.
Gary Schwartz, The Afterlife Experiments.
Thank you.
The Afterlife Experiments. Yeah, I think I read that. I'm not sure. I think I have. But yeah, there are a lot of people doing research on this. Yes.
So I just have a question. So for me, usually there's a connection. You said it says something so for water for you. Is that a part of it? That there'll be some kind of thing that connects you back to that, and that you experience that person or the memories?
No, it's not like I have any particular memories around water or anything like that. It's more just an observation I've made over time that it is not unusual for me for there to be water nearby when I can sense people better. I don't know why. And I don't know if that's unique to me or if that's easier for the spirits to come through. I don't know. So, okay, let me move on to past life experiences. Last week when I was talking about my therapy with Gary Lenz, I talked about that we didn't go looking for past life experiences, but both Gary and I would have said we didn't know if we believed in that or not, but we were open to it. Gary and I were both open-minded explorers of consciousness. And so mine came about spontaneously. The first one took 3 full years to unfold because I kept just getting hints. The first hint I had was I was dreaming about the number 29 over and over and over again. If you have repetitive dreams about something odd like that, it usually is trying to tell you something and means something. And Gary and I worked and worked and worked, and finally we got to this memory. And I will say, and this is again for Paul or any of you who know about what it's like to work with people who are pulling up regressed memories. When I pulled up these past life memories, they were abreactions, just like people with this life trauma will often experience when they're exploring their repressed memories. I mean, I felt them, I sensed them, I was there, we acted them out. You know, Gary's office was in his home much of the time, and I'm sure all of his family members got an earful quite often because my sessions were not usually quiet. And, well, not always quiet. When I was abreacting something, they weren't, because, you know, if you see something coming at you and it's going to kill you, you're going to scream or do something. So, but I still don't know what those were. The only, in terms of trying to pull up evidence, I've tried to see if I could find any way to get evidence for any of these to see if they really occurred. The only thing I found could have been something different. So I would have to say no, that I have not done that. I can say, though, that the experience of remembering those things, those abreactions, I really think just played a major, if not crucial role in my healing. Because I think last week I told you about that I had been horribly, morbidly depressed for like 20 years. And then I started working with Gary and we started doing this kind of work. And after a while, the last 20 or so years of my life, I have been happy, I have been joyful, I am able to function. I don't have nearly the conflicts I used to have. I cannot tell you the difference. And I believe that whatever I was doing, and whether those were past life memories or not, I was healing trauma that had somehow come into me and was mine to heal. So maybe I just made it up into stories that I could then call a past life. I don't know what I did, but they were very healing. Okay, now, let me look at the time, because I told you all I would save time for y'all this week, and I want to make sure I do that. Let me see if there's anything on this that really needs discussing. A bit on spirits and other presences. I have never been spoken to by a saint that I know of. If any of them have spoken to me, they're not identifying themselves. But I often receive voices that I don't know who they belong to, and they don't identify themselves. I think I know I have written and told many of you about that I spent many years not coming to church. I just wasn't my thing. And then one day I heard a voice that said, "You need to go back to St. Lawrence." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, really?" Because I liked my Sunday mornings the way they were. but it just kept persisting. You need to go back to St. Bart's. And it would give me no more information, none. But I do, I'll talk more about my faith journey next week when we discuss sacred voices. But I do trust these voices, whatever they are. They seem more real than anything else. I accept them as having a bigger picture view and being wiser than I am. And so when I was told to come back to St. Bart's, I came back to St. Bart's. That was several years ago. The only other teeny bit of information that I've gotten was that it's about healing. Now, I don't know if that's my healing, St. Bart's healing, somebody here. I don't know. That's all I've got. But I'm here and I'm grateful for the nudge. The other spirit thing I was going to share is a totally different one, and this was really a presence, and this one was verified. I was with my husband, many of you know, or some of you know Jim Pugh, and we were walking through Piedmont Park at night, which we often did. We lived on 6th Street, and we would go for walks at the park all times of the day and night. And we were walking in the park, and suddenly I just felt this strong presence of evil. And I mean, I've never experienced anything like that. And I walked on a bit, and then Jim said, "Oh, I feel it too." And Jim was not the type that would have said, he wasn't a frills, he would stick with his literal experience, so I trust that he really was. And we didn't know what to do. I mean, you know, and I wondered if we were going to walk upon a crime scene, or I didn't know what to expect. But the only thing either of us knew to do was just to keep going. And so we, again, there was water. We were walking around the lake. We walked around the lake, and as we got to the far side, I said, "I think it's lifting a bit." And he waited a bit longer, and then he said, "Yes, it is." And we went ahead and walked home, and both of us were just sort of shaky because it was a terrifying kind of experience to have. I kept thinking the next day I would see that someone had been murdered or raped or whatever in the park. I did not see anything like that. I do not know what that was. That's all I have about it, but it was certainly a profound experience. Okay, now let me go ahead and see where we are. There are some other things that ChatGPT threw up that other people have. I haven't had any of these particular experiences, so I'm not going to spend time on them, but a lot of people have other kinds of things that they talk about. Okay, now, this is important, and then I'm going to end with this idea. So I've had all these experiences. What do you do with them? How can they help you? How can you use them? Well, I use mine all the time, and I am so grateful that I am aware of my multiplicity, which I believe we all are, just not everyone knows it. But everyone has had times when you say, "I don't know why I did that," or I really didn't want to have that extra donut. I don't know what maybe, or I don't even like that. Why did I do? We've all had experiences like that. Well, with my awareness of what's going on inside, I can often tell. Not always. The turnip seed thing that I told last week, I did not know for 3 years. I did not know how that cat got her name. But anyway. So what I have lots of parts. I'm aware of lots of parts. I don't know what's typical, how many. I don't know if we all have millions or if I don't know any of that. But I know that I have a lot. But I have some key players. The one that is that I'm probably, I am connected with, as I called them last week, those 3 giggly girls. And I do know them, and they have different functions. And I do have to be careful. I was getting ready to talk to you about one named Amanda. Amanda is very different from me. Amanda, she's 13, she loves church. She would be here every day, whereas I get bored. She also, and she's got very, very, very strong beliefs, Christian beliefs. And I have to be careful talking about her because she's also very sensitive. And so we're so different that it would be easy for me to make some off-the-cuff comment about how she is, but I won't because I care about her. You know, she's a very sweet kid. Now, the one I use the most, or she's just here, is, her name is Robbie. She's 5, but I should also say age does not matter. And I don't know why that works, and that's true with clinical people with dissociative identity disorder also. People who work in this field often talk about genius children, you know, because you'll see someone who's 5, but they know more than anyone else in the whole system and can, you know, quote encyclopedias for you, you know. So I don't know why, but age isn't part of it. So anyway, Robbie is 5. She likes to help, and she does not get overtaken by emotions. I do. I get overwhelmed. I have to take breaks. I'm introverted. I have to pull off and get by myself a lot. Robbie can keep going. So quite often, she is the one that helps with things. And you can, run out of time, you can work with them and you can say, I need a break. Can you all do this or whatever? And it's a sense of like feeling like your consciousness is going back burner, and yet here you are, you know, continuing to do whatever, but you're not experiencing it. It's wonderful. So anyway, here's how we end. So that's me, okay? Some days it is just too much. The other day, and I do like to play with my parts, and we play with each other, you know, like the prank they played on me with turnip seed. The other day I came in and I had left dishes in the sink overnight, and I just quipped and I said, whose job was it to do the dishes last night? And because, and that's not Robbie, that was just a graphic I happened to have, but they can help you. They can do other things. So anyway, okay, I'm going to stop there, and I would love to hear from any of you who has something to share or questions.
So I'll just tell you something that I experienced, and I don't think I'm unique, but my mother was living in Philadelphia area. My brother, who's in North Carolina, was in charge of all her making sure she went to the dentist and all that, and he was able to do that because he could do his own job functions. And so I was going to visit my mother, so my brother said, take her to the dentist. And then jump forward, my mother died, and I was in my own kitchen. And I did not hear anything, but I had a message that said, thank you for taking me to the dentist. And it was not my thought. I knew it was not my thought.
Yeah, you can tell.
And that's the only time I've experienced it, and it's really a gift if you can understand those other things. But then I've heard someone say, God spoke to me, but I didn't hear the words, and it wasn't intuition. It was words of not of my own.
Yes.
And I understood that's just like my mother's message. So
Yes.
anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Anyone else?
In addition to this book that was mentioned, when there's nothing good on TV, you might have fun researching
the paranormal psychology research that was done at Duke University, starting in 1935, I think. Eventually, it moved off campus. It's now the Rhine, R-H-I-N-E Institute.
Okay.
But they've looked into ESP for decades, that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just want to say that Edgar Allan Poe, your comment on lucid dreams, he called it a period between wakefulness and sleep. And he did try to control it. He had several essays and some short stories. One of them manuscript found in a bottle. But for him, it was the period between wakefulness and sleep, and he did practice
Yes.
to control that.
Yes, that is what it is, and you can practice it and learn to control it somewhat. At least interact with it.
So we've kind of been doing a